want as the draft moves on. But this is a good pick for him now.
Well, let's go quickly to Cleveland, because now Baltimore, Minnesota, Chicago are on the clock. And let us just say that all three of those spots are potential homes for the two next quarterbacks, Culpepper and McNown. But Sal, let's go to you at Cleveland. What's brewing?
Well, what's brewing in Baltimore with the Baltimore Ravens, I talked to the Director of Football Operations, Ozzie Newsome, a few minutes ago, and he said his phone has been ringing off the hook. He went down the list: Denver, Miami, Tennessee, Dallas, all trying to jump up to number 10. Apparently, Anthony McFarland is in the sights of Mike Shanahan in Denver, so we'll keep an eye. He said he'd like to stay at number 10. And, you know, Javon Curse is still there, the Florida linebacker, but they are really strong at linebacker. Chris McAlister is one that's very intriguing, the cornerback out of Arizona. Ozzie Newsome likes him very much. Now let's go to Chris Mortensen in New York.
Yeah, so I think that the Ravens and Ozzie Newsome and Brian Billick even are doing cartwheels that Chris McAlister is here. I know that they had some discussions with Detroit even about swapping, but the drama there was Minnesota calling Detroit and Lions refusing the trade with inside their division. That would have been for McAlister, so Baltimore really happy that he's here there. And then, of course, now McAlister goes, and we are looking at this Dante Culpepper scenario and Cade McNown, Chris Berman, as you mentioned a little bit earlier. But I know this much, Baltimore very happy McAlister is there.
Yeah, there's no question about that, Mort. And Mel, I mean, for pure value, McAlister, we said Champ Bailey was kind of like a Deion Sanders. Some say Chris McAlister is like a Ronnie Lott in the way he's going to play. But, you know, you also have the quarterback question. Baltimore has Scott Mitchell and maybe soon to be signed Tony Banks, the quarterback. Should they look at a young quarterback with an offensive coach like Billick, or should they go best available?
Let's see what the value is in terms of the draft board, Chris. I think when you look at that, you will see Chris McAlister highly rated on the draft board. The number one player right now available on the draft board, according to my ratings, John Tate. You see the other players available, Anthony McFarland, the teams are looking to move up for, but the quarterbacks are down the line a bit. I know they're thinking, hey, quarterback of the future, Dante Culpepper, but they did not feel that McAlister would still be there at that point. So he would become a nice pick at that point. You see the offensive tackles, center guard Damian Woody, and of course Andy Katzenmoyer, the big cat. But in Baltimore, you have Dwayne Starks. They drafted him 10th overall last year, a smallish corner. Rod Woodson on the other side, a veteran. They want to move him inside the safety, so they will have a hole at corner. McAlister, 6'1", 206, opposite Starks. Now you have your bookend corners. Woodson moves inside. They hope Ken Herring can stay healthy. All of a sudden, that secondary is 100% improved.
Baltimore, Minnesota, Chicago are the next three teams on the clock. And the Ravens, is the card in? Is that what we understand? Well, the quarterback situation, Joe, is something. I mean, Brian Billick, offensive guru, new head coach. Should he look QB here for the future?
I don't think he has to look QB. If he wants to look QB, you're going to get a guy who's gone through the mill in Tony Banks, who he's entertained the last week or so. You've got Eric Zier, who's talked about being traded, Wally Richardson, Kendrick Nord. You know, the guys you don't know, really. Scott Mitchell, who is sort of recycled and looking for an opportunity to play again, and probably will be given the chance to start there. If they do sign a Tony Banks, you get this guy who has really struggled in St. Louis only because he's been through a lot of coordinators, a lot of offensive changes. I think you don't need to go shop for a quarterback here. I think cornerbacks are just as valuable at this spot.
Let's go up to the podium now and join the commissioner so he can quote the Ravens.
With the 10th pick in the draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Chris McAlister, defensive back, Arizona. Minnesota Vikings now on clock.
Hard hitter, Mel.
And what? He just glides, Chris. He's so effortless in his motion, and he's 6'1", 206 pounds. Watch him here. The way he breaks up the play, closes on the football again. Effortless in his glide. Senses what's going on, and has that burst and that anticipation in coverage. Here on the deep play, interception on the deep ball against Nebraska. Here, a kick return. This is in the season opener on ESPN against Hawaii. And he's going to take it all the way. Opening kickoff, he goes 100 yards. Here's a punt returner. Again, showing his athleticism. Look at this kid. He's 6'1", 206 with tremendous speed. Another anticipation, interception, reacts to the football, and makes the big play. Great players make the great plays. Chris McAlister had all those interceptions. 6 as a junior, 5 as a senior, 2 more in the Holiday Bowl against Nebraska. And I think that's the difference in McAlister. 2 years at Arizona, but he made the most of every opportunity, Joe.
You brought up the depth chart. When you take a look at where they are in the secondary, when I talked to Brian Billick, he said, you know, if we can get a marquee corner, our linebackers are a good, quick bunch, probably one of the best in football. Now, all of a sudden, you stabilize that backfield. The key here is Rod Woodson. You get a guy like McAllister who's big like Woodson. Woodson can teach him like a big corner how to play out there. Starks on the other side, Stephon Moore, Kim Herring. You've got yourself a really solid secondary. Sure, Brian Billick is an offensive coach and would like to have gotten probably a wide receiver. But what's the next best thing? Stopping people from being able to move the football is a great way to beat people in the National Football League. The addition here, I think, is a big plus for the Ravens.
Ravens are an interesting team in that they were 6-10. But they had 5 Pro Bowlers last year. So is this a team that now is ready to make a little bit of leap in a division where, frankly, you can move around a little bit with an expansion team in the division? We shall see if this draft pick of McAllister helps them along the way. Mike Tirico, your observations.
Chris, there's some off-the-field issues with McAllister, one that was resolved in some ways on Friday. The background: in August of '98, about 9 months ago, he was charged with petty theft, fined $405, and given 3 years probation and 10 hours community service. What happened was the payment of the fine did not come forth. So at that point, a bench warrant was issued, but on this past Friday in an L.A. court, his attorney paid the outstanding fine. McAllister was sentenced to serve 10 days in the city jail, appear before the court on June 15th to show proof of the time served, and the probation was reinstated. So essentially, once the fine was paid, they have him back to the initial situation where there is some probation that he has to deal with. In seeing him play personally and talking with his coach, Dick Tomey, who relates him to Darrell Lewis, a former Thorpe Award winner, best defensive back in the country, McAllister is a guy who Dick Tomey had a lot of positive things to say about, admitted a mistake, as many people do in these situations. And as far as the Arizona folks were concerned, Chris McAllister's balance of the '98 season was very positive, very forward, and they see this as a blip and not a significant trend of something that's wrong with Chris McAllister, as you mentioned, a very talented player who played against good passing offenses in the Pac-10 pool.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. By the way, first time since 1983 that we have not had any defensive lineman go in the top 10. Now, Minnesota, who had the most interesting draft on one pick last year with